heard of Scientology so afraid of?
This is SPTV.
Hi guys, hello.
Hi.
We're here with No Culty Vibes at No Culty Vibes, and she's joining us at SPTV for a little segment that we wanted to do about, you know, all the things having to do with having grown up in Scientology and also other cults. Because what cult did you grow up in a cult or?
So I wasn't raised in a cult. I think I was raised in an environment that lent itself well to me joining cults. But I was part of 3 culty groups that we can talk about later in my early 20s and
Okay.
deconstructed and started understanding in my late 20s into my 30s. So I have an interesting story.
Definitely. And I think, guys, it's super important to understand that, as much as Scientology has gotten that sort of like pop culture phenomenon, they're not the only ones with the business model. So, the more we find out, speaking to other survivors of abuse, we find out that, pretty much all of these abusers always use the same type of blueprint, the same types of tactics, the same types of dehumanization tactics to, really keep people subjugated. Because really what we're talking about is like the abusive, toxic subjugation that takes place in human interactions that can be found in every other corner, not just in Scientology.
Yep. It's in a lot more things than we realize.
Yeah, it's definitely in the soup and in the cereal. So before you think that it can happen to you, you might already be part of a cult, And I think, Marie, like it's important to understand that all these structures of so-called hierarchies where humans have to, pretty much like gamify, achieving these levels, right? And it all comes at the expense of stepping on people, so that, when we talk about Hollywood, yeah, we're not saying that Hollywood is exactly like Scientology. They're definitely in bed with a ton of Scientologists. But, Hollywood is structured in that same manner of like who is higher, who's got more influence. And that's really the power that's being wielded. In Scientology, they call it an OT power. But, in Hollywood, they call it how many Instagram followers do you have and how much money can we make if we partner up with you? And that's like the superpower of these celebrities is their ability to become cash cows and lend their image and their popularity to these causes that can be found at every corner of Los Angeles and beyond,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah. Hollywood and pop culture has really interesting parallels to cults and to things like Scientology. Like you were saying earlier, the same structures of abuse exist within it. And, cult comes from the word culture. And our culture is very focused on Hollywood and pop culture. And there's a lot going on there.
Well, and I think that, people knew, and America knows, and that's why this is such a pervasive problem, right? Because the government gets involved with influence. How can we influence this? How can we influence that? Who can we tap that has the power to move the needle, to influence, the culture and move it in this direction and that direction? It's been used, oops, my alarm clock. It's been used throughout, you see it going back to, Nazi Germany, influencing people, like putting people in positions of like, oh, this is the prominent person that really knows what in the hell he's talking about. And they used like that form of celebrity endorsement, even back in the day, to prop up their own movement, right? And to really kind of put it in a way that they were the ones that knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what's so problematic about these narcissistic pyramid schemes, you guys, because as long as the leadership is contaminated, no law, no law enforcement, no person can fight against that corrupt ill will of that person, of
Mhm.
that narcissistic pyramid. And the more that they are capitulated to, the more we find that they fall into that whole power game play. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, it's always done at the expense of recruiting others for their own self aggrandizing purposes. And unfortunately, the other person, the end user, is never, best interests are never considered. They're tokenized, they become pawns in a scheme. And
Mhm.
it's a sink or swim thing, because you need to recruit more people to show your value. And that's how the dwindling spiral really takes place. That's how a lot of these families, you guys, get all sucked up. The grandmother, the nephews, the uncles, everybody. Like, in Mexico, Cassie, that's where I grew up, in Scientology. Like, fun fact, like, there was a cadet org in Mexico. Who would know? In the late 70s, these people were already like spreading like wildfire. And very much like all these like Herbalife and Amway culture, like, oh, bring your people to the seminar. It's a free seminar. Yay, let's bring everyone. It's going to be so fun. We're going to give you refreshments. I mean, literally, you guys, you would know that a refreshment could lure you in, but those were the
Yeah.
tactics.
Yeah. So my culty story actually starts with an MLM.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So,
What kind?
um, do you want to just dive into
Definitely. Yeah,
kind of
for
my
sure.
culty story?
Uh-huh.
So, I grew up conservative Christian, but my mom's side of the family is Catholic and my dad's side of the family was Methodist. So, like
Mm.
as a young child, I did the Catholic thing. I have all the trauma from Catholicism, the Catholic guilt. And then as an older child, I think the Methodist church is a lot more chill than some of these other Christian churches.
Mm.
But there were still issues with the church structure, and we left a church for being horrible to its staff and congregants. And then I never really went to church again as a teenager. But my mom was super into MLMs, and MLMs correlate very closely with Christianity and conservative Christianity in America,
Mm.
at least. And when I was 18, a woman I nannied for started her Mary Kay business and got me into Mary Kay. And I started doing that from the young age of 18, as soon as I could sign the paper. And
Wow.
I did that
Also, they
for
did at least make it 18 and up.
yes. Yep, you had to
Okay,
be
you guys.
18 to sign the paper. Yep.
You heard it here first. Mary Kay, repeat, Mary Kay didn't go around recruiting underage, under 18. And
They didn't,
Scientology definitely
but
did. Oh, they
well,
did?
some MLMs do. Some MLMs will recruit, especially now with like influencer culture, they will try to recruit like 16, 17-year-olds. They'll stay in like teenage years. And of course, like but you can't legally be part of it at that age and you can't legally make money at that age. So like they'll kind of work for their mom or work for their aunt or like their 18-year-old friend that does it. And then as soon as they turn 18, they'll sign and they can actually legally be part of it.
Well, and I love
Um,
that you just brought up influence culture, right? Because it's like another form of child trafficking happens within that influence culture, you guys. Like these moms that decide to take over their Instagram accounts of these like teenage girls, and then they're just
mhm,
like selling them out, selling them out, selling them out. And then the girls get all screwed up in their head because, we grow up, Cassie, being told how special we were and how important we were and how we had all these qualities for being prodigies, right? Because
mhm.
we were doing all these things inside these hotels. So we were, a form of influencer, if you will, inside the hotel, right? And our
Yeah.
parents were proud of us for what we were doing. Oh, aren't you so special to be doing that? Aren't you so special to be that trained? So it follows that same model of parents that subject their kids to something that is not normal, something that is exploitative, something that no real minor knows how to consent or if this is going to work out well for them. Because I think that's
Right.
the most important thing. It's like at that time, Cassie, you could have asked any of us and we could have told you, of course, like we know this is better for us. Like you can't get us out of this hotel. We're so special. We have this uniform that's so special. Like Tom Cruise is about to show up. Like you are
Hmm.
disgusting and stupid and whatever because you're not part of our hotel. You don't even qualify to be part of us. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like the narcissism was like off the charts. If there was a Richter scale of narcissism, this thing was just like going like this over and over because, L. Ron Hubbard.
Yeah. Yeah, so that a lot sounds like the second cult that I say I was a part of. I
Mm,
mean, I was part of it. I just didn't realize it was a cult until I started deconstructing a lot of things. But it was a Christian church that claimed to be non-denominational, and every time I asked where the beliefs came from, they always said non-denominational. It was just biblical beliefs. But after getting out and researching it, I realized it was a church with Pentecostal roots. And the man who started it, Rick Joyner, came out of Assemblies of God. And the Assemblies of God is a worldwide organization for different Pentecostal churches.
mm,
So that one is where I learned how to be a Christian psychic. And we would never call it that because psychic was a bad word in Christianity. We called it
mm.
prophetic or prophetic ministry. And we were taught how to hear from God to give words of encouragement and edification and comfort to other people. We saw it as a way of like ministering to other people. But a lot of people in this movement still today take it really far. And I started seeing the harms of that pretty early on. But there are a lot of like kids in this movement that are taught to prophesy from a very young age, too young to be giving people spiritual absolute messages from a higher being for someone's eternal life. And they would say similar things to that. Like, what, of course, like, this is amazing. We're so connected to God. And parents are like, I'm so proud of you for speaking to God and telling these people and doing this. And you think that everyone else around you is um morally inferior, and like how sad that they don't have what we have and aren't part of what we're part of and don't speak to God and don't believe in it and all the things.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to, have this parallel conversation we're having here, in terms of like, I mean, there's the exploitation of that formative years, right? The teenage years of
Mhm.
all kids are so special. And in a way, people that are cannibalizing those years are doing it because they really do fetishize kids. And that's the sickness of it all, right? Like, as much as
Yeah.
it's hidden with all these, like, oh, but we're just, wanting to really give people spiritual messages. And it's like,
Mhm.
what kind of an adult really is taking it upon themselves to go get a child to tell them something, like you said, about their deepest spirituality? It's just, again, it's
Yeah.
like, I always say this, Cassie, because it's like, it's the year 2023 today. So maybe a lot of this derangement could have passed for so many other times, or there could be all manner of excuses. Well, the culture that, right, going back to your said culture and cult, the
Mhm.
culture was that this was all okay.
Yeah.
So, but we're saying like, no, guys, it's the year 2023. Whatever the culture has been needs to be really checked up, you know,
Yep.
and the fact that these business models of these fake pyramid schemes of the Amway and the Mary Kay and the Scientology and all of these that are out there recruiting people because we're really going to have your back, but it's all based on exploitation once they get there. And unfortunately, the business model is incentivized with all the wrong ways that
It
even
is.
people that are well intended, Cassie, because that's how I would say about Scientologists, it is unthinkable and disgusting how they've been defrauded and lured to participate in this disgusting hotel culture. Never mind that they're so cognitive dissonant that everything they see is through this like filter of like self-infantilization, and it's so dangerous, right? Because they are full-blown adults making very real decisions about what they're endorsing, what they're paying for, and what is going on. But in their own like self-adulation and self-aggrandizing and delusions of grandeur that are bred in that culture, they become so dejected from reality that they cannot even think of the plight of a minor. It's just not even something that they're even considering at that point, because it's all about them,
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and it's so sad. It is so that's exactly how I feel about people that were part of the church that I was a part of. There are people that are still in that belief system, and they think that they're saving people, and they are very well intentioned, and they're completely defrauded. Like they're constantly being lied to, constantly being misinformed, and constantly given excuses when people are horribly harmed and children are horribly harmed. And it's awful. It's so sad to watch. I have this one person that was a mentor to me for a long time that I still love and adore. And I think she's extremely well intentioned. But I've covered a group on my podcast more so called YWAM, which is called Youth Without a Mission. And it comes from the same Pentecostal, like, I think it came from Foursquare churches, not Assemblies of God, but it's the same belief system. They believe in the prophetic, they prophesy, and it's a massive organization that was started back in the 70s. They have bases all over the world and they consider it decentralized. So they make a lot of excuses when we try to call it a cult, but they have minors that they are moving across international borders, much like Scientology, to send on these missions trips that these minors are paying for out of trust funds or money they raised from their local churches that might actually be doing something good for the world, and money that their families are giving them to go across the world to be tortured and abused for 6 months and then sent home with horrible PTSD and horrible issues. And, this person that I look up to is like, well, my friend's kids went to YWAM and they love it. And I'm like, cool, great for your kids' friends. This child died at a YWAM base. So can we talk about the harm?
Yeah, and I think what you're talking to, your point, Cassie, is, these institutions, the problem is systemic and institutionalized. And, even kids that want to say,
Absolutely.
well, it didn't happen to me or it wasn't as bad to me, it's fine. There can be different levels of degrees according to, for example, the level of entitlement you have. Like
Mhm.
you've seen me, I've covered Elizabeth Moss, pretty in depth so far. And Elizabeth Moss grew up a privileged Scientology celebrity child. She was handled with kid gloves she was told she was special all the time. Like, again,
Mhm.
going back to how they're treating themselves of this like fake royalty, right? Because they have this
Yeah.
staff at a hotel that whenever they do show up, the literal red carpets are rolled for them to walk on, and all of this who has made about these people being so special, again, because, oh, does your dad work with a celebrity, then you're very important. But then you're like
Mhm.
someone like Laura Anderson, oh, your mom is actually in the Sea Org, then you're just a slave. Like, know your place, know your place, know your place. And
Yeah.
Elizabeth Moss can tell us, oh my God, this is so wonderful and great, you guys, but with that same face, they're not willing to recognize that, yeah, maybe it wasn't so bad to you, given that you were the celebrity, given that you were given the special treatment. Like the woman that you said, it's like, I don't know, maybe your kids did get more special treatment, but it doesn't mean
Mhm.
that sending someone across the world into these camps where they're being exposed to danger, right? And
Yep.
it's not acceptable. It's not
It's not.
acceptable to outsource your parenting to randoms. Let's just literally call it in a way that you
100%.
can't call it dumb anymore. Like, stop
Yep.
giving us the pitch. You're outsourcing your very parental responsibilities until your kids are, 21 and up. If you're not drinking, then what in the hell are you doing choosing for yourself these things that, after
Yeah.
21, then you know what? All bets are, no one can come and cradle and canoodle you. Like, you want to be a part of something really disgusting, that's going to be up to you.
Yeah, and I mean, I was one of those people when I was part of this church. I completely understand that. I was a very privileged person in that church and in that environment as a, straight white woman that came into it later in life that they wanted to keep around, that they really wanted to like acclimate to the culture and evangelize and advocate for this thing. It took me being in another situation that was even more culty and isolated to see the harm and where that came from. So I worked with a business coach going from the MLMs into the Christian culty psychic thing. I got into the business coaching industry. It's a straight pipeline. You don't
Yeah.
have to take any twists and turns to get there. And I found a business coach because she was giving prophetic words to people on Facebook. She would do Facebook Lives and give prophetic words. And she was part of Bethel. And she was trying to get into Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry. And again, same belief system. It was just a church started by a different man but still from Assemblies of God, still part of the same patriarchal and like harmful belief system. So she like kind of wrapped it all up into one for me. And that's such a long story that I need to tell in detail one day, but she was trying to start a cult. She brought me and someone that I am now really good friends with together on this friend's farm. And she brought like a guy there that was her on again, off again boyfriend. And then she had people at the Bethel school that she was a part of. And she was trying to put us all in one location and start a like kingdom builders, like business commune. Like she legitimately was trying to start this whole thing. And I worked with her and gave her thousands of dollars for several months before my friend and I had time alone to talk to each other and say, something's not right here. Do you feel weird about this? And we were like, yeah, I do feel really weird about this. Do you feel weird about this? And we realized that she was a malignant narcissist and we were being systematically abused by her over time. And when I watched Leah Remini's Scientology in the aftermath and saw Scientology was like the perfect eye-opening thing for me because I saw a lot of the abuse, a lot of the slow abuse over time, but then a lot of the business structure as well. The way that Scientology requires you to pay for things and like pay thousands and tens of thousands of dollars for things. I was like, oh no. I think this girl was trying to start a cult. And that's when I started researching cult psychology and started understanding these systems and structures and how they're culty and how they kind of breed an environment for malignant narcissists to do this and do it often. Because these, churches that I was affiliated with are not the only churches in this bigger system that do this. And her as a business coach was not the only business coach doing that. A lot of them were coming from MLMs and coming from that structure. And again, were well-intentioned, but they were passing down this systemic, harmful, and like really unethical way of doing things. And once I woke up to that, then I was able to like look at the bite model and look at cult psychology and say, wow, my church was doing the same thing. And it was just as abusive, maybe just not to straight white women that just joined, but certainly to children, certainly to the LGBTQ plus community, certainly to anyone that didn't look like them. And it took me completely unpacking all of that and deconstructing to see how bad it is.
Well, and it's so refreshing to have you say everything we experience and has been explained ad nauseum on SPTV. But in a completely different system,
Hmm.
and again, being on the flip side of this, you guys, is we are able to advocate for those kids that we now really understand why informed consent of children cannot be superseded or overridden by these like business models that come across as like a legit business, right? Why would they not be doing that business? So all this stuff has this flair of authenticity and legitimacy.
Yeah.
And again, going back to, okay, maybe it has worked all these eons and centuries, but we are in the year 2023. So
Let's reevaluate.
let's
Let's
really,
look at
like,
this
what in the
differently.
hell? Like, your
Yeah.
critical thinking skills, you can have access to those now.
Yeah.
Your ability to advocate for yourself. What is in your best interest? What is in your child's best interest? What would you really want a parent to do if that was your childhood? Because again, this cycle of abuse perpetuates, right? It's like
Yep.
the grandparents did it to their kids, and then the kids do it to their kids, and then their kids. It's like just a cycle of generational trauma that needs to be stopped at its feet, because mothers don't want to do what's going to harm their kids, full knowing they get lured, their maternal instincts are turned against them by these systems, this patriarchal systems that you were just discussing. It's patriarchy, it's like embedded BS, delusional status, whatever that these people are thinking that they have, that really means a lot. It's like all you
Yeah.
have to do is call yourself chairman of the board of what board? Of the board of child
The board of
abuse?
what? Yeah.
Like, of the board of systemic child trafficking? Like, what is your board? Honestly,
Yeah.
like, and it's not like you don't know what in the hell you're doing. Go check the child trafficking laws. It's not like it's not already written in the laws, Cassie. Like,
Yeah.
that's what the problem is with all of this, right? But it's like, meanwhile, Hollywood only pitches us child trafficking. Where does it happen, Cassie? In motels, in city motels that truckers visit and the truck stops. It's like, if you're
Yeah.
not, then there's not child trafficking. If you're on Instagram, on TikTok, no, you're not child trafficking because you're just an influencer. If you're being signed up to a billion-year contract where, literally Tom Cruise is going to show up and John Travolta, then that hotel is not child trafficking.
Yeah.
That's where we are in this year 2023. That's how easy it is to gaslight the courts, to gaslight all law enforcement. They all play dumb. And
Mm-hmm.
again, maybe it worked because, you were not out, Cassie. And how long did it take you to figure it out? I mean, maybe really has taken us this long to figure it out. But we are full-blown
Yeah.
grown adults now, and we did go through that trajectory, whether we liked it or not. That's where our lives ended up being, right? And we were given a front row seat at that dysfunction.
Yeah.
So can we do something with that front row seat, given that the show sucked? It couldn't have sucked more. It couldn't have been more disgusting. It couldn't have been more unacceptable. And that's all we're saying. Not only do
Yeah.
we want our money back, we want the show to stop. We want the freak show to stop. Leave the kids the fuck alone.
And
Period.
you would think in 2023 that people would be more concerned about children being harmed this way. Like, you would think, of all things, that people would understand that these things are happening to children that have long-term, lifelong effects. And, people get harmed at different levels, but in these systems, it can be the worst kind of harm. And it often is. I've been making videos about Ruby Frankie and the 8 Passengers YouTube channel, that they were a family vlog since 2015. And people were raising concerns about her pretty much since 2015. And her children, she harmed her own children because of these cult-like coercive systems that we have in place.
And I'm so
And
glad that you just brought
it's
that
sad.
up, Cassie, because, going to that specific example, you guys, is the influencers of the year that have been
Yeah.
YouTubers literally all this time, right? So we got the influencers there literally abusing their kids for profit in plain sight. And where was the media when this was going on, you guys? Nowhere to be found.
Nowhere.
But you know what? Now they really care about the story, you guys. They could not be caring more, because really the corporate media really cares about child trafficking. Where? Where are they with their care? They only care
Well, they
when it's going
care
to be
after the
convenient
worst
for
has
them.
happened. They
What's that?
only care after the worst has happened. After the worst thing that can happen happens, then they care. But they refuse to look at the warning signs.
You know, it's like what I always say, Cassie, is like it's a refusal to do any kind of heavy lifting, you know.
Mhm.
And again, it's like when it involves child abuse, if the corporate media cannot do heavy lifting for child abuse stories, then why in the hell do they even have a job? Any of
What's the
them.
point? Yeah. Yeah.
Literally, like if you're not defending the ones that literally have no voice, that depend on other type of advocacy in order for the corruption not to just go, you know, wherever it wants to, right? Because like what you're saying about these cult moms, I mean, Lori DeVallo, another one of these
Mhm.
women that, you know, the parents become deranged, you guys. And again, it's like it's a psychopathy that happens, a very real, you know, disassociation from reality that, again, is like it's not acceptable to leave kids there.
It's not. It's not. So I'm curious a little bit more about your story. So you got
Mhm.
into Scientology in Mexico, you said, as a child.
Yeah. Well, my
So tell
parents
your
were
parents
already in
joined?
the Sea Org when I was born. Imagine.
Oh,
My parents were
okay.
already in the Sea Org, so they had already signed a billion-year contract, and they were being wearing the military uniform. And in fact, you know, my mom got pregnant with me without even being married. So they had what is called in Scientology an out 2D. I'm a child of out
Mm.
2D. And then they married, you know, and they were stuck in there. They were also recruited very young. And, you know, Cassie, the only thing I can say for themselves now is, you know, L. Ron Hubbard was being called a New York Times best-selling author back in the 70s. Literally,
Yeah.
I think, you know, when we talk about, you know, influencer of the year, L. Ron Hubbard put influencer on the map.
Mhm.
Literally, like he put the business model for himself, like do this, write a book, get it told by the New York Times, because if they say New York Times bestseller, then everyone's going to think it means something that must be good, right?
Yep.
So at that time, they couldn't Google the information. Anorexia was real,
Right.
right? So they're only getting whatever the New York Times is saying to do must be okay. And they started getting lured into these seminars that little by little started depersonalizing them, dehumanizing them, telling them who they were, and you know making them pay for their own freedom. I mean, that's what's so ridiculous. It's like, how are you paying to go free? Freedom is free. It's like one of the only
Yeah.
things that are free. Like, okay, I mean, unless you're in a captive state, why do you need someone to tell you how to get out of a jail you're not in until you get
Mhm.
inside the jail, and then you have to keep paying?
To get
And
out.
that's what they're doing, right? Like the hamsters, like they're just running like this. And the more you pay, going back to the point that you were just bringing up, like this woman making you pay all these thousands of dollars, right? It's like that's part of the cultic rite passage of way, you guys. And you can find
Mhm.
it in Scientology. You can find it at the Hermes store, buying a Birkin. Oh, did you pay for the money? Did you get selected? Are you good enough to own a Birkin? Where's your
Yep.
street address? Tell everyone at Hermes where you live and work and who you are, so we really know if we want to have you carry this stupid bag around, because you really must mean a lot if you carry that bag. I mean,
Yeah.
how?
Humans are wild.
And unfortunately influenceable, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
problem here, is like the influence is real and it's fine. I mean, go own an Hermes if that means a lot to you. But we're bringing up like the fact that it's like recruitment tactics that are being done. And, you know, while Hermes is not, you know, employing children to make their bags fingers crossed,
Mhm.
fingers crossed that there's no slave child labor going on in any of the fashion houses,
No.
because that has not been a problem whatsoever, right? Like nothing like that has ever happened.
That's not a thing. That's not happening.
So again, we
Yeah.
go back to the point that we are in the year 2023, and a lot of stuff does not make sense. So yeah, I was in Mexico,
And
started in
then
Mexico.
did you work in the hotels in Clearwater?
So yes, so my parents left the Mexico, like left Scientology. My parents blew after um,
Oh.
that, so I was in Mexico until 5 years old, but then I tried to literally unalive myself by drinking paint thinner. And then my mom got so freaked out, and because I was like found at the hospital, they were trying to like pump out the paint thinner out of my
Yeah.
stomach, and then I was revived, and that's what made my parents blow. So they got
Okay.
declared suppressives. And then they get lured back in because L. Ron Hubbard died, and they get told, oh, never mind, you're not a suppressive anymore. We're trying to get all these people back, that were called suppressives. They're not going to be called suppressives anymore. They were trying to just bring more people back because a lot of people were pissed. So my
Yeah.
parents fell for it.
Mhm.
They went back into it. They got made to pay more money to really, be part of the group again. And then when I finished seventh grade in Mexico, so I was kind of starting to have a normal childhood. My dad was gone pretty much the whole time because he went to Clearwater to get trained as an auditor. So I was
Okay.
pretty much just raised by my mom as a single mom. She had to like make all the money, do all the child care while my dad was like living
Wow.
it up at the hotel in Florida.
Yeah.
So when I finished seventh grade, they tell us, let's go for a summer in Florida. Disneyland, Disney World is there. It's going to be so fun. You're going to be by the beach. My grandmother had been recruited to be part of the hotel. That she was already like
Oh, wow.
there for like 8 or 10 years. So it was like, again, your grandma is there, whatever. So you think this is all so normal that you're living such a normal
Yeah.
thing. So I arrived there in 1991, I believe it's when I arrived, or 1990. And
Okay.
it was that summer that I was told that I was not going to go back to school and that I should instead do courses at these hotels. And I was literally mortified. I was so embarrassed because I was like, I'm not gonna finish high school. Like, that's so
Yeah.
gross. Like, I was like, that is so gross. Like, who
I'm a
doesn't finish
dropout?
high school?
Ew.
But
Yeah.
they were like, no, L. Ron Hubbard said that schools are stupid. They're teaching you very stupid things
Oh,
there. You don't need to know
yeah.
anything. And as long as you do these courses, you're gonna be great. So then again, Cassie was like part of my survival mechanism to then do the courses. And I was this child prodigy that could read the L. Ron Hubbard thing and do all the things that the courses said to do. Never mind that I thought everything was ridiculous, what I was studying. Like, it never made any sense to us. Like,
Mhm.
when I say the
Well, and
phrase,
you weren't
what in the
given the
literal
choice.
hell, I feel like that was what I said to myself every second that I was
Yeah.
in that hotel. I'm like, what in the literal hell? But then you have to be like, oh no, it makes a lot of sense, because if you questioned anything, you got yelled at and screamed at. Like, it
Yeah.
was not, you couldn't say, are we really gonna do what it says here to do? Hello, like, is
Gosh.
everyone okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they
That
substituted
is
my schooling with these BS courses that were, again, not appropriate for children. You guys, I mean, it's triple, quadruple, nintuple X rated material. Let's just start with that
yeah.
fact, because no child should be placed in a position where they're going to pretend they're an adult with an adult, because that's the other disgusting, you know, Scientology belief they're out there pitching. Kids are just adults in small bodies. And you cannot have a hotel full of grown men and women, you guys, where all of them agree that adults and kids are the same. And if
That's
that's not
awful.
clear to anyone, we would love to hear from the FBI that can really clarify to us how they allowed these hotels where they literally tell minors and children they are not that,
Mhm.
and then still in this year 2023, pitch that as a religious belief that America stands behind as you child traffic and enslave minors in this country, shredding your constitution, abolishing your constitution, abolishing all the amendments, they're
Yeah.
canceled. They're canceled. Child slaves are a thing.
Yeah. That helps me understand a lot because, when I post different videos on TikTok about celebrity Scientologists, people will, defend them and say, they are second generation or they didn't have a choice or they're brainwashed and things like that. But the bottom line is they're being served by minor children in hotels that they're paying an organization not for the hotel. I mean, they do pay Scientology to stay there, but the children are not getting paid. That's child labor. Like, children are not allowed to do that in the United States. Like, child labor is illegal in the United States. You have to be a certain age. And I know Scientology has children under that legal age being exploited for labor and working and doing different tasks. So I think that's like, I didn't know as much about like the hotels and that situation, and I really want to hear more from you too, because bottom line, the celebrities know that it is illegal for children to be doing that in the United States, regardless of what they believe of children in small bodies, which we know is a problematic belief that leads to horrible trauma and terrible things being done to those children. But they know the children are laboring, and that is not okay.
And going back to that narcissistic viewpoint, Cassie, is again, it's like the world wouldn't get it because we are that special. L. Ron Hubbard told us that we are. So if you want to come and criticize that we make children, that we empower children, right? Because they would flip this on us and be like, you are calling children bodies. How dare you? You're trying to make children into animals. So you're saying that they're animals? So you're saying that they're just like an animal? They're a spirit. We're calling them a spirit. Like, we actually are uplifting them. And it's like, miss us with your BS, infantilize, nothing to do with reality pitch, right? Because again, it's like you said, it's like it's a troubling belief. I mean, it's a degenerate belief. I'm sorry, like literally only a degenerate would tell themselves that a child is not a child and then act as if that child is an adult. It's like that's against human nature, against common sense, against intuition, against, again, Cassie, there's a lot of subjects that are, a billion trillion shades of gray. You can think this, I can think that, the other person can think a million things, but there's the child abuse aspect that it doesn't have the 50 billion trillion shades of gray. It literally is it child abuse, yes or no? And the simple thing can be, it's like, are you cognizant of that kid's ability to understand what in the hell is going on, seeing that they are that influenceable, seeing that that is a proven fact? If anyone wants to question science on how kids are developing, they're welcome to actually read the research by real people that did research, that needed to be peer reviewed, that needed to be criticized, that needed to be questioned, that needed to pass the standards, not L. Ron Hubbard style, where none of these proteges are allowed to say a shred of a critical thinking thing because they couldn't be more stupid to even question a thing that L. Ron Hubbard say. They have to take L. Ron Hubbard at its word. And going back to your point, Cassie, it's like, if you were an adult and you signed up for that pitch, I mean, we don't wish that on our worst enemy, quite frankly, to be led down that thing, because again, maybe you didn't intend to do so much harm, but the minute you adopted that pitch and you did take it upon yourself to pay a lot of money, and that's why I called out Laura Prepon, put your money where your literal mouth is. Because if you're going to come up here and tell us in Good Morning America and all these shows that she does, oh, LGBT issues so important, women's rights, stand for what you believe, while she's giving money to an organization that doesn't allow a shred of a woman to have a single agency over herself. Never mind that she's not the one that has that problem because she's the slave master.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem is here, you guys, about the hierarchies of believing you're so much more special than all these people because Hollywood really told me and the Hollywood Reporter pitched me and all these people that are such elites that, you know, it's like, pitch us something real, not this fake woke BS that it's just so easy to see a trillion miles away. I mean, it's so obvious, you know.
Yeah. You know, it makes me think like another connection with Hollywood and pop culture. I have been watching a series by Allison Stoner called Dear Hollywood. And Allison Stoner was a child star. And they have like different topics in each episode. And in one of the first episodes, they were like, Hollywood was created by adults for adults, right? When it first became a thing, adults were writing adult entertainment and hiring grown adults to perform in these new things called movies. And then at some point, it progressed to a point where they wanted to write more real life things and they brought children into STEM that was created for adults. So children in Hollywood still have more protections than children in Scientology, by the way, but still are required to work at an adult level and be professional at an adult level and keep up with all the adults around them that are doing things. And they may or may not be being cared for by adults that actually understand what children need, especially in that environment. It's this adultification that these systems and structures put on children that is damaging to them long term. We see this with Hollywood child stars. Like there are more cases of Hollywood child stars having issues than not, and going to rehab than not, and you know, having some kind of public scandal that we again villainize them for. But why do you think this happens over and over and over and over? Maybe the adultification of children is a really bad idea, a really terrible thing.
Mhm.
And when
Yeah,
are
I
we
mean,
going to
you
look
have
at it?
even like, let's think about Britney Spears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being brought up in that system, even though she was being told that she was so special and amazing, never mind that she was being kept like an animal in a cage with these horrible conservatorship from hell, you know, and from her being driven, you know, victimized, being driven into complete desperation and then being blamed with, oh yeah, well, you know, she's so screwed up, let's really handle her money, right? And it's like this has played out in full public view. Everyone has seen how the courts agreed to everything until the court of public opinion caught up with their shenanigans. And then all of a sudden, we're finding all manner of laws that
Oh,
say, oh, yeah, you know
yeah.
what? This couldn't have been so screwed up if, oh, how dare anybody does this? This is so wrong.
Oops.
And it's like, you're talking about people that, you know, it's like they were in conservatorships, like people that are literally bondage. They can't speak for themselves. They can't advocate for themselves. Like nothing they do will work because they are put in a state of full-blown slavery, you know.
Yeah.
And this happened in front of and you know, because nobody wanted to really like, oh well, you know, sucks to be Britney. And it took how many decades for her to even be outside of that thing. And the ramifications didn't stop because she got some sort of justice. Never mind that her dad, her disgusting, horrendous, despicable father that she has really not seen any repercussion for doing what he did, literally.
Nope.
Like,
No.
you know, because we
And
do have jail.
neither did her manager, Lou Taylor, who, you know, wrapped her up in that and is still doing it. Actually, Lou Taylor is on the board of a church called Church Home that is also Assemblies of God rooted. It's not quite as prophetic as the church that I went to, but it's wrapped up in the same network as Hillsong. And there are a couple of like celebrity mega churches in LA with pastors that are tied to Carl Lentz and Hillsong and Justin Bieber and all of those celebrities. And Lou Taylor sits on the board of that church. So she is connected to the systems in Hollywood and also like the cultic systems of these churches,
And
all
that's
of them
why none of
exploiting
these
children.
celebrities can play woke, you guys. They get
Mhm.
put there to spout out their wokeness, but it's done as a sick joke on everyone that they're joking at the expense of. And again, it's, they're all being commoditized, they're all being used as pawns. It's okay, because you know what, as long as the billions and millions show up in their bank account, it doesn't matter that it's all blood money. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Who cares? Like, I'm so influential and I'm so special and I'm so amazing. So I think that, Cassie, that, it's good that we start connecting dots, because, it's not just this and it's not just that. There's a
Yeah.
very complicated web that has been supported in America. I say this is a case of legal malpractice, because
Yeah.
as much as this idea that, oh, the minute the word religion is invoked, all the legal minds of this country have a short circuit in their head, having not a shred of access to any of their critical thinking skills. That's how manipulatable, gullible, and idiotic this legal minds that do go to school for a lot of years to, make sure that they're the best people to defend and advocate. Well, it would be great to find out how you cannot even advocate for kids with textbook cases of child trafficking taking place in your country as you bring back slavery in this year 2023, as slavery hasn't left your shores, United States of America. You're still Valeska, brought from Australia. I think she was first from Switzerland, then to England, then here. Claire
Yeah.
Headley, brought from the United Kingdom. Me, brought from Mexico. Multi-international. And for us, Casey, it felt like it was legit, right? Because there's all these people from all these countries. Like, we wouldn't be a racketeering conspiracy in these hotels if people from all over the world weren't participating on it. Of course, it would have stopped by now.
Absolutely.
Is how you see it when you're in there.
Do you follow Daniela Mastinik Young on TikTok? That she wrote Uncultured, and she was in Children of God and then the Army, and she wrote her book about.
We literally just DM'd each other this morning. So
oh my God, I love that.
She's amazing.
I love her, and the book that she's working on right now, which is going to take years till I can read it. I'm so mad about it, but she's calling it The Culting of America. And she's really focusing on connecting all these dots of the legal system and the way that we approach religion and the systems that we've had in place for so long, and the connections to a lot of these really destructive, harmful cults. And I cannot wait to get my hands on it, because it's very much along the lines of what we're talking about here, of this thread that's woven through the system of it all that allows this to all go on while everyone just watches.
Well, and the other thing that I would say, and that's what's important, that we're having these platforms, Cassie, because again, it's like people that observed it from your vantage point. I observed it from my vantage point. She observed it from her vantage point. And, it'd be great for us to do a chat together as a panel of people that experienced the culting environment, that had to put ourselves back after they depersonalized us and made us believe that we were co-opted into these frauds that we were part of, where we were doing things that were not us. And that's why we're advocating for all these people. Like, look, you're not being you. You're being told who to be, how to be, where to be. Find your own agency. If America is going to call itself the land of the free and not the freaks, which it is what it is right now. America, the land of the literal freaks, you guys. This is a freak show, what we have in America, with toothless law enforcement, laws that are very much written in books that no one is around to enforce because they're too busy catching who in the hell knows, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's not like we have law enforcement knocking on our doors and saying, we really want to stop the crime and enforce these laws. And if you guys have some firsthand information to give us, let's discuss. Like,
Yeah.
these. Mhm.
I was just gonna say, I remember watching a documentary about Waco years ago before I even really learned about cults. And even dating back to Waco, there were people who were cult experts at the time, or at least had studied them a little bit, that were trying to explain to the FBI and like all these other law enforcement agencies, listen, you're creating a really big problem for yourself. Like, you're not going about this the right way. You've waited too long. You're not addressing these issues. And they never listened. And it ended horrifically because our law enforcement doesn't know how to deal with these types of systems yet. And it's really sad.
And
But I'm hoping that with,
corruption starts getting stamped out, Cassie, when it gets called
yeah,
out, right? Because the thing
yeah,
is, again, all of these parents that are in Scientology that are literally being the benefactors of their child being trafficked, because that's the point of the
yeah,
child trafficking in Scientology hotels. Your parents benefit financially by dumping you
hmm,
when you're an 11-year-old. I mean, I just talked to somebody yesterday that went into the Sea Org at 11, 12
hmm,
years old, 13 years old, 14 years old. And, you know, the minors are still being part of this operation. People that are thinking, yeah, in the year 2023, that doesn't happen. These people only acquiesce according to what they need to do, and they crisis manage behind the scenes. So maybe they're
yeah,
not doing it over here as much as this and as that, but they're still tapping into it, because you need young minds that are that manipulatable to program them to do that back-breaking, disgusting jobs that no one in their right mind would want to do unless you really buy the pitch after you're 21. But
yeah,
for so many of my friends, Cassie, like I hate it because they're still there and they don't have an advocate. They have no one. Everyone's still running around with, like, let's be very respectful of these deranged beliefs written by a convicted, indicted felon, L. Ron Hubbard, because that's even when we go to the point of the source of this stuff, Cassie. And nobody really understands that L. Ron Hubbard was a full-blown convicted, indicted felon. In France, he
yeah,
got convicted, and then he just went on the run. And then he was just on a ship recruiting more child to traffic in his ship.
yeah,
Like, he was just floating around recruiting Janice and recruiting Shelly Miscavige and recruiting Dave Miscavige. I mean, these are all child trafficking victims of L. Ron Hubbard. I mean, it's not like they weren't child trafficked by their own parents themselves.
yeah.
So,
Oh, it's awful. It's awful. But like you said, I think that all of us having these conversations, and so many people starting to do it too, I think, something's happening, right? Progress is being made. Having the conversations is important. And I think, hopefully we get somewhere with it. Hopefully the more people that talk about it, the more people that understand cults and coercive control, then, you know, maybe we can reevaluate. Maybe in the future, you know, we can change some of these things and other people won't have to experience this the same way we did.
well, sunlight is the best disinfectant, you guys. And
Yeah.
we're talking about a virus here, and we're talking about sunlight needed to basically create an environment where this virus cannot breathe anymore. And that's
Yeah.
all,
Yeah.
and coming up, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have this ability to make our own points and speak to the facts ourselves. We've been told that the corporate media is going to help us, and they always just splice and dice everything so that they can produce a sensationalized segment that does not have the care of the kids that were
Mhm.
dehumanized as an objective. You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
that's why it's a broken model, because if their
Yep.
model is to just help themselves, then we came from a place where they were also helping themselves with our information as humans. And that's why the corporate media is the enablers, the ones that launder the image of all of these people for how many years. And it's
Yeah.
little attempts like this that start getting the real information out, and all of you guys in the comments that are listening to these very difficult conversations to be had. I mean, nobody really wants to have these conversations, trust me. Like, it's taken
Mhm.
everything we have, but we are being able to be that change we want to see, Cassie. So
Yeah.
taking these proactive steps and having an audience that's engaged and wanting to be on this right side of history, helping kids get out of these abusive, toxic relationships. It's going to help everyone. It's going to help even the
Yeah.
abusers. The abusers don't want to be abusing, you guys. We're us making it hard for them to abuse others is a love letter to our abusers. Hey,
Yeah.
you're not going to get away with this anymore. You're going to put it down. This is toxic for you. This is not in your best interest. When the law does catch up to you, you're going to really wish, it's like this guy that just got sentenced, that went to the Capitol to organize all these rioters and all this illegal activity. When they're in front of a judge, they're like, yeah, it was my worst enemy. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, that's the plight of all people that are doing things that are not in their best interest, being influenced to be part of cults that are destructive, group think that is thinking that they're really going to do something. And if you're not careful, you're being recruited to do unthinkable stuff that you shouldn't really be doing. So,
Yeah. I love that perspective. And I think that's important too, to keep in mind that even the abusers are harming themselves. So,
absolutely.
should we
So,
answer some questions? Do we want to
yeah,
see
do we have
if
some
anyone has
questions
some
here? Do you have
questions?
any that you checked up?
Uh, I don't think I can highlight anything on my end. I thought I saw one earlier.
I tried to go through it, but I felt like people were keeping, making very good notes of what we were talking about.
Yeah.
But they were more like reacting to our amazing comments. Let me see.
Yes.
I mean, there's
Willie
one
Weed.
here, but I mean, this one is,
Oh,
what's with the obsession with the freaky sex questions in the auditing? Seriously. Um,
yeah.
that's exactly what we need to understand, Abigail, for ourselves in this year 2023. When they pitched it to us as kids, we were like, I mean, it couldn't be that we shouldn't be asking these questions. It must be very, very needed to ask these questions. But today we just go, what in the literal hell?
I always found it really fascinating with Scientology that there are a lot of these like sexual aspects to auditing and things like that. But there were not a ton of accusations of L. Ron Hubbard being like a sexual predator, which usually happens with destructive cults at that level. Usually at the very top, there's all kinds of crazy things going
Well, and
on.
you know
And
what, Cassie? I mean, look, L. Ron Hubbard's image has been, sanitized over and over with bleach and every
yeah,
type of sanitizing agent they could possibly find, right? But even then, we know he was disgusting. He kidnapped one of his kids. He was telling his
yeah,
wife that he was going to kill them. And, he was a deranged, disgusting lunatic, right?
yeah,
So, and he was sleeping around with all manner of women. I'm actually doing a whole video of this woman that was his lover while he was alive, because I
yeah,
feel like a lot of his image is so in the background as if he is still not literally telling these people what to do today, right? Because that's the
yeah,
problem here. They're all still running on his memos. And this idea that, well, he died, so it's not like he's around. And it's like, no, wrong. He's still very much alive. Everyone is still being defrauded with his jokes that are being
yeah,
played on at the expense of the people that are being abused. So, and then the sexualization of the audits, Cassie, is like, I mean, that's what these audits were all about, invented by that man. They're extreme role play sessions that are just
ugh,
mirrored in
yeah,
bondage that is so horrific. No bondage should be that you have no boundaries or safe words. I mean, that is just literally abomination, like full blown.
yeah,
Like, and if you exposing kids to that level of 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 no privacy whatsoever, it's full blown torture of children. And
yeah.
So erosion of all common sense boundaries, because what, L. Ron Hubbard wrote it on a book that you should just do it and not think about it twice, so again,
Yeah.
it's like we're imploring everyone to rethink the pitch really well for yourself, and sit in front of a mirror if you have a mirror around you, and really sit there and confront yourself and ask yourself, is this really legit what I'm endorsing? That's
Yeah.
what I would say to every last Scientology parent and L. Ron Hubbard protege loving person. Like, really
Yep.
think, did L. Ron Hubbard really have your back when he was luring you to act, in a horrific way?
Yeah.
There was another one here
Yep.
that said, every time I heard kids are adults in small bodies, it makes me so angry. I watch my kids, grandkids, and great grandkids grow, and they are kids in kids' bodies. Thank
Yeah.
you, Loretta.
Yeah. Thanks, Soretta.
So,
I think
and there's,
there's a
mm,
question. Someone just asked a question, Scooby Doo. Do you see it?
oh, he just asked it.
Yeah,
Oh, here. Scooby Doo, do you have any contact with your family? You have contact with your family, Cassie?
I do. Yeah, because my family wasn't in the culty church that I was a part of. We have very different beliefs politically. But my dad was actually watching the live earlier. I saw him comment
Oh,
something.
wow. Okay.
And yeah, I still have contact with my family.
And no, Scooby Doo, I don't have contact with my family. I mean, unfortunately, from a little bit of what we got into my upbringing today, in Scientology, what happens, what's so horrible, you guys, is that some of us grew up without parents. Some of us just grew up with child traffickers acting as if
Mhm.
they were our parents. And, they were toxic people. And in our entire childhood, they never stood up for us. They always just abused us, put us in harm's way. And, as an adult, I really have to, know that I didn't deserve that, and that the people that did it to me need to literally find out for themselves what in the literal hell, and then figure out how they could even have a relationship with me going forward. Because
Mhm.
there's no world, in what world does a, child that was trafficked, go back and reconnect with the people that trafficked them, so
Yep.
for us that were trafficked as kids, a lot of us don't want to have anything to do with our parents. And it's just, I still have compassion, and I hope that they find out what in the hell they did one of these days, and they stop
Right.
doing it. Since I have a nephew that they're now, doing
Oh,
these audits on, and doing all of these child abuse on, but again,
that's
it's like us coming forward and putting them on blast is gonna make them think twice. One day they will think about it, before they do it.
yep. I saw Sarita said that her name, it sounds like Sir Rita. Which I've been wondering because I've seen her on on a few lives I've done with Liz as well.
Mm,
And I've been wondering how to pronounce your name. So I will remember that. Sir Rita.
perfect. Then we have here, Scientology must be held accountable for the human right abuses and trauma has inflicted without a shred of remorse. Thank you, Purple Groovy 69.
Yep.
Agreed. Agreed, agreed,
Agreed.
agreed.
I think
Well,
that's a
you
good note
guys,
to
thank
end
you
on.
so much. I think this is going to be the end of our live for today with Cassie, but we'll be back. We're working on some other stories to bring forward to all of you guys. So keep your questions coming. If you have any questions based on this live, leave it in the comments, and definitely follow Cassie Marie at No Culty Vibes, which is
Yep.
exactly what we're all about here. No culty
Yes.
vibes. Let's spread awareness. Let's all realize what in the hell. Let's realize it is the year 2023. And yeah, if you didn't know before, now you do know. So today is a new
Yep.
day to make a different decision and a different choice, because that's all it takes. Life is comprised of choices. What kind of words of wisdom could you leave us with, Cassie?
I don't know. I would recommend that everyone who's fascinated with Scientology especially definitely look into some of the other cults and some of the other information. And the more stories you hear, I think, from different situations, the more you can find the threads of commonality and piece things together and be willing to look at the groups that you're a part of. Cults exist on a spectrum. Not all of them are abusing children and doing the most horrific things. They might just be, a little bit harmful or not harmful at all. So be willing to look at the groups that you're a part of, be willing to see harm and believe victims and believe people when they tell stories. Don't think like your group or your guru is above doing something harmful. And I think that is one thing that I think will change a lot of this, is when we can understand the commonalities and be willing to look at ourselves, like you said earlier, look in the mirror, look at the things that we're part of, and believe people. And we can believe people when we can hold up their stories against like the red flags and the things that we know to be true, and the way that this culty coercive control works. So I think that's important.
Very good words of wisdom from Cassie Marie, guys. Thank you so much for that. Well, you guys, we will be seeing you all extremely soon, and
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us today. And we will see you on the literal flip side. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks.